Your daughter refused a hygiene inspection,
said Deborah Langley, president of our HOA board, as if she were reading off a grocery list. I had no choice but to intervene before the situation escalated. Her blouse was crisp, her clipboard color-coded, her expression flat and certain, like she'd just recited the policy to a custodian instead of explaining why she locked herself inside a bathroom with my 13-year-old. You mean the clubhouse restroom door I just kicked off its hinges? Deborah blinked. Just once. There's a procedure for these kinds of misunderstandings. You'll be receiving a formal notice. You won't be receiving Cambria's silence this time, I said, because you missed the one camera you didn't know existed. If you're a parent or anyone who's watched power abuse hide behind fake policies, you need to subscribe now. This woman weaponized bylaws against a child, and we had to dismantle her story piece by piece before she disappeared the proof. My name is Brannick Hale. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a soldier. I build digital reconstructions of crime scenes for the state police. Timeline stitching, audio syncs, motion analysis. I don't guess what happened. I show it. And when my wife kicked in that bathroom door, I didn't need a warrant. I needed the truth. Because Cambria isn't just my daughter. She's the only reason I believe in family again. We adopted her after a case that nearly broke us both, Natalie and I. She'd survived 6 different foster placements before she turned 9. I met her during a community fundraiser, noticed the gap between how she acted in front of adults and how she scanned exits like someone waiting for something bad. That instinct never left her. That's why she wears the yellow hoodie. Always zipped to the chin, sleeves to the knuckles, hood pulled low. Some people wear comfort. She wears armor. It was a gift from her birth mother, one of the few things she managed to keep when CPS moved her midterm. It smells like lavender even now. When Cambria's upset, she knots the drawstrings until her fingers ache. 2 weeks ago, Deborah Langley called it gang-associated attire, put it in a citation, claimed it violated Willow Bend Reserve's youth appearance and sanitation standards. A policy added after last year's board turnover. Natalie laughed at first, said, "Let them try to take a hoodie to court." Then, last night happened. We were at the spring community barbecue, half-cooked burgers, cheap lemonade, HOA propaganda stapled to trees. Cambria went inside to use the restroom. 10 minutes passed, then 12. I was mid-conversation with another parent when I saw Deborah walking out of the corridor alone, fixing her blouse like someone resetting a mask. I moved fast. Natalie moved faster. The bathroom door was locked. Deborah's voice inside was low and coiled. "We can't keep excusing poor hygiene just because you're sensitive." Cambria didn't respond. Natalie didn't knock twice. Now the door hung askew behind us. Cambria stood frozen in the corner, still clothed, clutching her hoodie like a life vest. Her smartwatch had stopped pinging location updates 5 minutes earlier. Deborah had silenced the device using a wall-mounted hand dryer, loud enough to drown a whisper, strong enough to block audio. I stepped between them before Natalie said something she'd regret. Not because Deborah didn't deserve it, but because I knew what needed to happen next. I didn't want rage. I wanted evidence. Deborah made her fatal mistake the moment she said, "I had no choice." I'd seen people like her before, administrators who blur rules into tools. She didn't touch Cambria directly. That wasn't her method. She used tone, silence, and locked doors. She counted on fear. She counted on paperwork being more believable than a frightened girl's story. But I don't rely on belief. My garage camera feeds sync every 30 seconds. One of them caught Deborah guiding Cambria into the clubhouse side door, using her body like a blockade. Another shows her glancing behind her shoulder, just once, before disappearing inside. That was the last footage HOA's system captured, but mine never went offline. I didn't tell Deborah that yet. I let her walk away, already composing her version in her head. I watched her pass out of view, like a shadow that didn't belong to anyone anymore. And when Cambria looked up at me, trembling but still standing, I knew the story wouldn't end there, not until the right authorities saw the truth. Not until the board could no longer pretend. Not until Cambria wore her hoodie in peace. I kept my voice low, even as the chaos in my head threatened to spill over. "Cambria's going home. You're staying the hell away from her." Deborah didn't argue. She didn't flinch, apologize, or explain. She just adjusted her watch and scribbled something on her clipboard like she was noting a sidewalk crack, not the aftermath of a locked room confrontation with a minor. Later that night, I sat in the kitchen replaying the footage on a silent loop. My camera wasn't part of the HOA's system. I'd installed it during winter, angled to monitor the side access to the clubhouse parking lot after we had some attempted break-ins. HOA never asked about it, and I never offered it up. It didn't feel like a secret until now. I watched Deborah linger behind Cambria on the path, stepping deliberately so the motion light would cut off before they entered the building. I watched her place one palm lightly on the door as Cambria reached for the handle, almost like she was guiding her in, not just following. She looked up once, at nothing, then disappeared inside. I froze the frame right there. I could feel the weight of it in my chest. Deborah wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was confident. Natalie came in and leaned over my shoulder. She didn't say anything for a moment, then asked, "You've seen this pattern before?" "More than once," I said. "And every time, the adults tell a cleaner version." "Not this time." Cambria was asleep upstairs. Hoodie still zipped. We hadn't pushed her to talk, not yet. She'd sat with her head against Natalie's side the entire ride home, silent, gripping the seatbelt across her lap like it might snap any second. When we tried to ask what Deborah said in that room, Cambria just shook her head and whispered, "It wasn't loud." Natalie had seen that expression on witnesses before. Kids who weren't hit or screamed at, just quietly bent under authority until they stopped resisting. That didn't make it less violent. I opened the HOA bylaws again, the printed ones Deborah had passed out with our move-in packet. There was nothing in the covenants about hygiene inspections. The closest clause was a vague line in the Youth Standards Appendix. Residents under 18 should maintain personal appearance in alignment with community aesthetics and basic health considerations. The HOA reserves the right to issue appearance citations to guardians for correction, buried beneath parking rules and landscape trimming guidelines. But even that didn't authorize physical proximity, let alone leading a minor into a private space. The pattern was starting to show. This wasn't an accident. It was calibrated, practiced. Deborah didn't need permission. She operated on the assumption that nobody would fight her hard enough to make it stick. She didn't count on me. My job wasn't about guesswork or confrontation. It was about proving sequence. A 3-second shift in audio sync could change a verdict. One corrupted timestamp, and a trial could collapse. So I'd spent my career making sure everything lined up. This would be no different. Natalie picked up the hoodie from the chair and folded it across her lap. "They're going to try to spin it," she said. "Say Cambria misunderstood. Say you're overreacting. They can try." "Do you think Deborah's done this before?" I looked at the frozen frame again, that single calculating glance at the empty path behind her. "Yes," I said. "But I think this is the first time she got caught." And catching her wasn't enough. We'd need something more than footage. Deborah was good at language. She'd say it was community safety. She'd say Cambria consented. She'd say we were making trouble where there was none. But she couldn't erase her intent if I could lock the timeline together, and if someone else on the board had seen it too. I needed a name, a crack in the board. One person who wasn't just nodding along. Natalie already had her suspicions. I had a short list. I'd start with Harlan Gist, the HOA treasurer. Quiet, avoided confrontation, but always watching. Natalie tapped the screen. "What's that in her hand?" I zoomed in. Deborah held a folded sheet of paper. When she followed Cambria in, I hadn't noticed it before. One corner torn. Some kind of checklist? Natalie's voice dropped. "She brought it in with her? She planned it." I didn't answer. I just kept watching the frozen frame like it might flinch. That yellow hoodie was going to burn a hole in their story, and I was going to make sure it happened on record. Harlan Gist's house was one street over, on the quieter edge of Willow Bend, where the sidewalks narrowed and the mailboxes were dented from years of real use. No decorative planters, no solar ground lights, just lived-in edges and a cracked driveway the HOA had gently recommended he resurface last spring. He never did. I waited until the sun dropped low enough that no one could accuse me of prowling. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe a polite deflection, maybe silence. What I got was a door half open before I even knocked. "You've been watching your feed," I said. He nodded once. No pretense, just a tired man in a threadbare hoodie holding a ceramic mug he probably didn't remember pouring. I saw her follow the girl in. I saw your wife break the door. I didn't report anything. I stepped inside when he moved back. The entryway was narrow, lined with boxes of receipts, board meeting folders, and 2 unopened HOA newsletters stacked on a side table. A wall calendar still showed August. She's done this before, hasn't she? Harlan exhaled. It wasn't quite a sigh, more like a pressure release. Not like that, not physically, but there's a pattern. Deborah uses wording like compliance checks or behavioral hygiene. Always vague enough that no one wants to press her on it. They think it's about clothes or attendance, not girls. I took a slow step into the den. The TV was on, muted, stuck on a community bulletin channel with the looping HOA rules scrolling at the bottom. Harlan didn't offer me a seat. He just stood there like a man rehearsing a confession he wasn't sure he had permission to give. I should have said something earlier, he murmured. My daughter, she had a run-in with Deborah 2 years ago, got cited for unsuitable physical presence at the pool. I didn't understand what that meant until I saw Cambria today. I stayed quiet, let the weight of it settle. She asked to inspect my kid's swimwear. I thought she meant for safety, sunscreen policy, some nonsense like that. His voice caught, but he recovered fast. My daughter shut down for a week after that. Wouldn't even go near the clubhouse. You're not the only one who missed it, I said. But you might be the first one willing to admit it. Harlan's hands trembled around the mug. He didn't strike me as weak, just worn. There's a difference. Weak people hide. Worn people carry more than they were meant to. Deborah's running a shadow policy, I continued. She counts on no one asking too many questions. She keeps it verbal, soft, always under the guise of community wellness. But she's escalating now. He nodded again, slowly. You have footage. Not HOA footage. Mine. Side camera, clean angle of her leading Cambria into the building. And something in her hand. Looked like a checklist. Harlan looked up sharply at that. Clipboard form, printed. Folded page, torn corner. Why? He walked into the hallway and returned with a manila folder. From inside, he pulled out a scan of an unsigned form labeled Youth Sanitary Observation, internal use only. There was no official logo, just language about voluntary inspections and guardians may be contacted for secondary review. She presented it once during a closed meeting, Harlan said. Said it was preparatory documentation in case we ever had to formalize our community wellness program. I didn't know she printed them. I stared at the form, bile rising. She created paperwork for this, I said flatly, even if it's not official. She's been beta testing it on kids who can't push back. I reached for my phone. Will you let me record your statement? Harlan hesitated. Do you think it'll matter? Yes, I said. If we make it matter. He swallowed hard, then gave a single nod. Okay, record. I hit the button. His voice didn't shake. My name is Harlan Gist. I serve as treasurer on the Willow Bend Reserve HOA board. I have knowledge that Deborah Langley has, without board vote or legal authority, initiated direct personal inspections of underage residents under the guise of hygiene enforcement. I believe these actions exceed her role and put minors at risk. I ended the recording, didn't smile, didn't thank him, just saved the file. We weren't ready to confront her yet, but we were close. 2 days later, the second notice came. It was taped to our front door in bold print, folded 3 times, sealed with the Willow Bend Reserve HOA crest. Deborah didn't knock, didn't ring the bell, just walked up like she owned the sidewalk and left it there like a warning. Natalie spotted her from the upstairs window and muttered something under her breath before heading downstairs to grab it. I watched from the hallway as she unfolded it. Violation, youth attire, non-compliance, repeated infraction, she read aloud. Cambria Hale. Failure to correct inappropriate clothing article previously cited under Youth Appearance Clause 5.2. Additional action may be required under Section 7.1, Community Health Observance. I stepped into the kitchen and pulled the original citation from the drawer. Same boilerplate language, same ridiculous clause. This one just had more teeth. Natalie scanned the bottom. Your child may be subject to temporary community-based intervention in accordance with HOA safety measures. She looked up. What the hell is temporary community-based intervention supposed to mean? Whatever she wants it to mean, I said. She's threatening to do it again. No, I said. She's daring us to stop her. Natalie didn't say anything. She folded the paper with precision, not rage. That was her tell. She only got calm like that when she was preparing for war. Cambria hadn't said much since the incident, but she hadn't taken off the hoodie either. It was like her voice had withdrawn into it. She went to school, she ate her meals, she answered softly when spoken to, but her eyes were quieter, protective. When I asked if she wanted to take a break from the neighborhood park or clubhouse events, she just shook her head. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said. "No," I agreed. "You didn't." That afternoon, I walked the path behind the clubhouse, not because I expected Deborah to be there again, but because I wanted to understand the choreography of what happened, the angles, the visibility, where the HOA cameras pointed and where they didn't. Most of the official cameras faced inward toward entrances, designed more to catch unauthorized renters or guests than anything internal. None of them captured the bathroom hallway. Mine was the only feed showing what led up to it, but I spotted something new. A fresh sign had been installed near the side path, mounted on a stake in the ground. Reminder: youth wellness checks may be administered at staff discretion. Guardians will be notified as needed. No logo, no HOA seal, just black letters on white laminate. It wasn't even listed on the official board bulletin. Someone had printed this on their own. I snapped a picture and ran the image through a software scan when I got home, identifying printer metadata using subtle dot patterns, something I'd picked up through a case years ago involving fake university letters. The signature matched the same Epson model Deborah had used for all internal board printouts. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. She'd made a rule by acting like it already existed. I logged the sign, time-stamped it, labeled the file, Deborah Langley, unauthorized signage, youth check directive. It would join the archive of other folders I was building: incident video, audio logs, board meeting minutes, Harlan's statement. None of it was speculation. All of it was admissible. Natalie joined me in the office, leaning against the doorframe. "We file this with the city?" "Not yet. I need one more thread to pull, something she can't reframe as policy, something that ties her pattern to deliberate action." She nodded. "Harlan's daughter?" "She's out of state, graduated early, might not want to revisit it." "Then we escalate the right way," she said. "And carefully." I turned back to the screen. Deborah's face stared back at me from the paused frame. One step behind Cambria, clipboard in hand, already writing the next lie before the last one was even. Questioned, she was pushing further now. She thought her paper trail would protect her. That fear would win again. But fear didn't work on people like me. And Deborah Langley had just escalated into the one thing I specialized in unraveling: false narratives dressed as official truth. The first time I noticed the printer discrepancy was by accident. Cambria had left her art project on my desk, a rough charcoal sketch she'd been working on for school. She'd smudged the margins with her thumb, leaving the outline of a paper fold near the bottom corner. I was scanning it in for her portfolio submission when I caught something odd in the corner pixels, a barely visible dot pattern repeating in the background. I'd seen it before: tracking dots, the kind laser printers leave behind, unique to make and model, invisible to the eye unless you knew what to look for and had the right light filter. Most people never noticed them, but I'd been trained to extract metadata from worse things: threat letters, ransom notes, election flyers that didn't want to be traced. I pulled up the photo I took of the new sign by the clubhouse. Same dots, same spacing, same signature. I opened a different file, Deborah's formal HOA notice from 3 months ago about holiday light standardization violations. The PDF she'd emailed. I ran the header through the same parser I'd written for timestamp verification. Identical. Her printer had signed every one of those documents, not the official HOA machine, not the communal office equipment they logged at board meetings, her personal Epson. She'd been crafting these policies in her home, printing them under the guise of HOA legitimacy, and distributing them before any board vote, which meant she wasn't just enforcing policy, she was fabricating it in advance of any process. I cross-referenced the youth wellness sign with Harlan's scanned form from the meeting. Not just same printer, same typeface, same formatting down to the margin. She'd copy-pasted the layout, then added new language depending on who she was targeting. This wasn't negligence, it was intent. Natalie walked in just as I was finishing the overlay. "You look like you're building a case," she said. "I am." "Careful," she added. "You're starting to sound like me." I'm not looking for probable cause, I said. I'm building irrefutable metadata. She leaned in closer, studying the screen. What's that block? Printer ID signature. Matches every unofficial document she's issued. She's been pushing unauthorized signage and fake policy paperwork from her own machine. HOA never voted on any of it. Harlan said she brought drafts, Natalie recalled. Not finished forms. I nodded. She predated them, brought them into the meetings like proposals, but she'd already printed them and sometimes distributed them to parents before the board even saw a draft. Natalie whistled, low and slow. You get a CPS investigator with half a brain looking at this timeline, they'll see she created a hostile enforcement campaign targeting minors under false policy authority. And that's endgame. Not yet, I said. We still need an operational pattern, something that proves she did it more than once, with the same method. Victim statements? Harder with minors. Cambria's still reeling. Harlan's daughter is out of state. But I don't need the testimonies to start the pattern. I just need the schedule. Natalie raised an eyebrow. What schedule? She's consistent, I said, tapping the calendar on the wall. Every HOA inspection sweep she's issued over the last 6 months happened within a 5-day window, after an unrelated community event. Pool day, picnic, yoga at the park. You're saying she uses events to scout. She identifies the kids she thinks stand out, then issues citations afterward under vague categories. Uncombed appearance, unsuitable swimwear, visible discomfort. All subjective, all predatory. Natalie crossed her arms. You can prove this? I just did. I turned my screen to show the cross-linked HOA event calendar, the timestamps from the citations Harlan had quietly forwarded, and Deborah's printer metadata, tied to flyers that were never board approved, not once, not even discussed in official minutes. Each citation followed the same cycle: observe, print, distribute, and justify. The date Cambria was cited for her hoodie, 4 days after the family fun walk. The same day Deborah logged her appearance as distracting due to oversized garment. The hoodie, that damn yellow hoodie. Natalie stared at the screen. It's a targeting operation dressed up as policy enforcement. It's something worse, I said. It's a system she designed to look invisible, and now it isn't. I hit save on the archive folder. The name I gave it wasn't technical, it was personal. Project Hoodie Trap. Cambria stood at the edge of the hallway like a ghost in her own house. She hadn't knocked, she hadn't said anything. Just appeared there, hoodie sleeves pulled over her fists, the drawstrings wound around one knuckle like a noose. I'd been so deep in timelines and printer dot overlays that I didn't notice her until Natalie glanced past me and stepped gently forward. You okay, baby? She asked. Cambria nodded, but it was the kind of nod you give when you're not sure what else to do. I don't want her to do it to anyone else, she said. Her voice was small, but it stopped the air in the room like a dropped stone. I turned slowly in my chair, gave her time. She walked in with the stiff, cautious steps of someone afraid of being misunderstood. I don't care if they call me dramatic, she added, or say I made it up. I just don't want her getting away with it. Natalie knelt beside her. She won't. I remember what she said, Cambria whispered, word for word. I didn't ask how. I knew. That's how trauma worked. The mind saved it like a scar. She said, I've given you warnings before. This is just a check to make sure everything's clean. Then she locked the door. I didn't want to say anything loud. I thought if I stayed quiet, she'd get bored. My stomach turned. What else did she do? Natalie asked gently. Cambria shook her head. Nothing physical, just talked about how girls like me don't always know what's appropriate. How she'd seen my hoodie dirty before and thought I was being neglected. She said it might be time to notify someone higher up. She looked up at me now, eyes glassy but dry. She was trying to scare me, wasn't she? Yes, I said, and I hated how calm my voice sounded, like I was trying to outthink fury. Cambria stepped closer. Can I help? I want to help. I hesitated. Then I pulled up the image stack I'd been building. Printer tracking dots, policy overlays, timeline pins, the silent evidence of a predator masquerading as a protector. This is what she did, I said. All the signs, not just to you. Cambria studied it in silence. Natalie rested a hand on her back, steady but never guiding. You said you needed something to prove it's a pattern, Cambria said finally. I remember one of the girls, from before. I blinked. Before? 2 months ago. I saw Deborah pull a girl aside after the pool opened. I didn't think much of it. She said it was about sunscreen. But later, the girl cried in the bathroom. Her name's Lila. She lives on Birch. I think she's 12. That changed everything. If Cambria's memory could confirm another child was approached, especially under the same health language, I could anchor Deborah's actions in a timeline that started long before Cambria's incident. Natalie looked at me. We can reach out to her parents, quietly. I don't know if they'd want to talk, Cambria said, but Lila might remember. That was all we needed, a ripple of consistency, a second point on the map. I saved the file again, renamed it, Witness Corroboration, Lila Birch, Event Echo. I looked at Cambria. You already helped more than you know. She nodded once, then asked something I wasn't ready for. Will she go to jail? Natalie answered for both of us. If we do this right, yes. Cambria seemed to accept that, not with joy, not with relief. Just a kind of quiet knowing that she wasn't crazy, that what she felt was real. That night, I added a new section to the evidence binder, not a video, not a transcript, just Cambria's recollection, typed in her own words, dated, time-stamped, and signed. And as I looked at her handwriting, careful, neat, deliberate, I realized we were past the point of collection. We were committed now, and Deborah Langley had just become the subject of her own forensic reconstruction. Harlan didn't answer his door right away. I knocked once, then again. I knew he was home. His sedan was in the driveway, engine still ticking, and one of his HOA binders was half visible through the front window. I didn't blame him for hesitating. Helping once was one thing. Getting involved again meant crossing a line he'd carefully walked for years. When the door finally opened, he looked tired but resolved. You said you needed a pattern, he murmured, stepping aside. I followed him in. He didn't waste time. He went straight to the coffee table and opened a flash drive case, set it beside his laptop like it was heavier than it looked. I saved the Zoom recordings, he said, from every HOA board meeting since the pandemic started. They were supposed to be deleted after the official minutes were approved. Deborah told us not to keep backups, but I did. Why? Harlan shrugged. Didn't trust her. He plugged in the drive and pulled up a folder marked 2023 Q3 HOA. Inside were 10 video files, all date-stamped, each one paired with a copy of the agenda. I scanned the file names. One stood out, July 18 Special Session.mp4. What was this one? I asked. Unscheduled. Deborah called it to discuss community wellness directives. Said it was too urgent to wait for the quarterly. He opened the file and skipped to the 32-minute mark. Deborah's voice filled the room through the laptop speakers. Calm, controlled, calculated. I believe we need to formalize inspection protocol, she was saying. There are children in this neighborhood whose appearance raises concerns, hygiene, modesty, potential neglect. We can't sit idle because we fear overstepping. One of the board members, a man I didn't recognize, pushed back. Are you suggesting we authorize physical evaluations? Deborah chuckled. No, nothing invasive, just to check in, a visual confirmation. We're community leaders. It's our duty. Another board member asked, and who performs these check-ins? I will, Deborah replied without pause. Harlan paused the video. The minutes just say, wellness policy discussed, no motion carried. But she printed signs the next week. Signs you didn't vote on. None of us did. I think she handed one to a parent by the clubhouse during Family Fun Day. I didn't put the timing together until now. I stared at the screen, listening to the flat echo of her voice again in my head. That's when it hit me, the precision, the calm. She wasn't improvising. She was documenting her own immunity. She said it out loud on a recorded call, I said. She knew it wouldn't pass, Harlan replied. But she also knew no one would stop her from acting like it did. I pulled out my portable scanner and copied the video file directly, added it to my external drive. Harlan didn't ask questions. She's going to come after you, I said. If this goes public, you'll be painted as the leaker. I already am, he said. Deborah stopped copying me on internal board emails last week. She knows I'm not with her. Why now? Harlan's hand hovered over the laptop. Because Cambria wasn't supposed to speak up. And because you didn't fold. I stood, zipped the drive into my case. She's not going to walk away from this one, I said. I'll submit this through the right portal. CPS, State Community Board, off network. We'll force a third-party review. Good, Harlan said. But you need to be ready. She's not going to go quietly. She picked the wrong kid this time. I left him standing in the doorway, laptop still open, face grim but clear. For the first time, Harlan wasn't just a reluctant observer. He was a witness stepping forward. On the walk home, the wind had picked up. The laminated sign Deborah had posted by the park entrance was gone, ripped free by weather or intent. Only a single rusted stake remained, like the ground had finally rejected it. I passed two parents on the sidewalk who gave me that quick, nervous look, the kind people give when they've heard something but aren't ready to ask. Not yet, but soon. Natalie was already waiting when I stepped inside. She didn't need to ask if I got it. She just said, "We have enough now." I nodded. It was time to build the case. By morning, I had every file segmented and labeled, 46 in total, Deborah Langley's voice, her unauthorized signage, the metadata linking her printer to fake policy documents, Cambria's signed statement, Harlan's recorded testimony, event logs cross-referenced with incident timing, and now the July 18th Zoom recording, where Deborah calmly outlined her intent to conduct visual inspections of children. But evidence wasn't enough. It never was. Not in neighborhoods like ours, where image mattered more than legality, and parents stayed quiet so they wouldn't lose access to the pool. So I didn't just collect, I built. I opened my forensic timeline suite, the same platform I'd used in state-level reconstructions. It wasn't meant for HOA disputes. It was meant for courtrooms, prosecutions, truth presented in motion. I started with a clean axis and plotted a horizontal string of events, each HOA community gathering, each incident tied to Deborah's inspections, each citation that followed within days. I layered Cambria's experience first, then matched it against the July 18th meeting. The pattern was precise, too precise to be chance. At 11:34 a.m., July 15th, community yoga event. Deborah was logged on site. 3 days later, a wellness citation was sent to a child whose leggings were inappropriate for setting. At 3:11 p.m., August 20th, pool party. Deborah present. 2 girls written up under appearance fatigue in early September. And then, the family fun walk. Cambria in her hoodie. 4 days later, the letter taped to our door. I mapped Deborah's printer signature next, overlaying her print jobs with timestamps logged on the HOA server, comparing what she sent to the board versus what she distributed to residents. Most damning were the duplicates, documents that appeared in parent mailboxes before they were ever entered into official records. Every timeline node had evidence attached: video, audio, metadata, or personal account. Every one of them clicked. And at the center, always, was Deborah. I labeled the entire build. Pattern of predatory conduct via HOA authority abuse. Natalie stood behind me, silent as the animation finished rendering. "Would it hold?" she asked. "In any oversight hearing, yes," I said. "With enough public scrutiny, absolutely." "And the state?" I nodded. "Especially if we bypass local channels." That was the key. Deborah had operated under the assumption that everything stayed insular, the HOA, the parents, the kids too afraid or ashamed to speak. Even if someone complained, it would loop back into the board, where she could bury it in procedural haze. But outside authority, that was the one force she hadn't accounted for. I backed up the reconstruction to 2 separate drives and encrypted a third to upload from a public terminal. My goal wasn't just filing a complaint. It was activating an investigation with enough weight and clarity that ignoring it would be harder than acting on it. Natalie handed me a contact slip she'd pulled from her case files. A CPS investigator she'd worked with before, one of the few she trusted. "Her intake email's separate from the standard portal," she said. "She'll look at what you send. But you need to keep me out of it. I can't be attached until this reaches their legal team." I knew what that meant. If Natalie got involved too early, the department could argue conflict of interest. If we waited, she could be a witness instead of a procedural liability. "You okay with that?" I asked. "I'm not the one who made this personal," she said. Deborah did. By evening, I stood inside the public library, surrounded by the quiet hum of computers and the muted shuffle of students and retirees. No HOA ears here, no board members watching from garden hedges or faux-friendly newsletters. I inserted the drive, opened the folder, attached the video timeline, Cambria's written testimony, the audio logs, and a summary file outlining the entire framework. Not speculation, not theory, just action, pattern, result. I hovered over the submit button, not because I doubted what I was doing, but because I knew what came next wouldn't be quiet. And then I clicked. Outside, the streetlights buzzed to life as the sun fell behind the townhouse roofs. The evidence was in their hands now. Deborah Langley's policies weren't just dangerous, they were traceable. And soon, someone with a badge and a mandate would come asking why a teenage girl needed protecting from a community leader. The first email landed at 7:06 a.m. Subject, Notice of Pending Review, Community Conduct Concern. The sender was exactly who I hoped for, Inspector Merrill Dow from the State Office of Child and Youth Protective Services. The message was short, clinical, and devastatingly effective. Initial submission reviewed. Your documentation is substantial. A formal case file has been opened. Do not inform the subject of investigation until further contact. Interviews to follow. I stared at it for a long minute before breathing. Not celebration, not even relief, just confirmation that the machine had started moving. Natalie read it over my shoulder. She won't see it coming. She'll feel it, though, I said. We didn't wait long. By midday, Deborah sent out a neighborhood-wide bulletin through the HOA listserv. It opened with the usual tone, passive, polished, but the edges frayed faster than usual. It's come to my attention that there are false rumors being spread about our wellness policies. These policies were reviewed in open meetings and followed with the utmost care for our community's youth. I urge any concerned parties to bring questions directly to the board rather than feeding discontent. I read it twice. She was rattled, and like all brittle power holders, she defaulted to control through tone rather than transparency. But I had no intention of replying. I wasn't going to validate her platform. I was going to tighten the noose with evidence, not arguments. Cambria came downstairs that afternoon in something I hadn't seen her wear in months, jeans and a short-sleeved t-shirt, no hoodie. She carried it folded in her arms, like a symbol, not a shield. You look good, I said. I don't feel scared today. Natalie met my eyes. That sentence meant more than any report ever could. But I wasn't done. I uploaded a second batch of files to Inspector Dow's case portal, annotated photos of the laminated signs Deborah had placed near the clubhouse and pool, printer signatures intact, Harlan's time-stamped videos lined up frame by frame. I attached Cambria's drawing of the moment she was locked in the bathroom. It wasn't evidence, but it was truth, rendered by a child's hand in charcoal strokes. By dusk, the portal confirmed receipt. At 9:13 p.m., a second message arrived. City liaison notified. Local law enforcement will initiate contact independently. We are coordinating interdepartmentally. No further action required from you at this stage. Which meant only one thing. It was time to let the silence do the rest. I didn't tell anyone else. I didn't walk the neighborhood or gloat in the forums. I just waited, watched, and documented everything. And I wasn't the only one. By morning, 2 more parents sent anonymous messages to the HOA account I had created. A private inbox linked only to the case ID. One, described Deborah approaching their daughter after swim class and asking if she felt clean enough to join the after-event snack table. The other remembered a similar interaction behind the playground. No physical contact, but enough veiled judgment to make their child cry when they got home. They hadn't come forward before. Now they had a place to land. And I wasn't asking them to go public, not yet. I only asked for one thing. Timestamps. I plugged those events into the timeline. Both matched Deborah's presence on HOA community logs. Same location, same pattern. Every detail clicked into place like it had been built to. Natalie sat beside me as I finalized the cross-section. You realize this is going to destroy her. She did that part herself. But it's not just her, she said. It's the culture, the way everyone let it slide. I looked at the monitor. The whole structure was right there, mapped, verified, and ready for anyone who wanted to pretend it wasn't. She tried to weaponize ambiguity, I said. But ambiguity can't survive a paper trail. Outside, the neighborhood lights flicked on, porch by porch, still and silent. But underneath, something had shifted. This wasn't about property lines anymore. It was about a girl with a hoodie and the people who thought she wouldn't fight back. The HOA meeting that wasn't on the usual schedule. Deborah called it a community pulse session, one of those non-binding, off-calendar gatherings she liked to use when she wanted to seem open without actually being accountable. It wasn't posted on the main board bulletin, just a quiet email sent at midnight. Subject line, Spring Harmony and Safety Discussion. But word got around fast. By the time Natalie and I arrived at the clubhouse, nearly every seat was taken. Parents stood at the back, arms crossed, faces tight with questions. Some avoided eye contact. Others didn't bother hiding their stares when we walked in. Deborah was already at the front of the room, flanked by 2 board members. Her clipboard was on the podium. Her smile was fixed in place. If she was sweating, she didn't show it. "Welcome, everyone," she said into the mic. "I'm so glad to see such wonderful engagement tonight. These forums are vital for keeping our community healthy, safe, and unified. No mention of the allegations, no mention of the signs, just smiles and buzzwords." Natalie leaned in. "She thinks she can preempt it. She won't." I kept my hands folded over the drive in my pocket. A backup of everything. I didn't bring it to wave around. I brought it in case someone tried to say this was all hearsay. That's how she'd survive, turning this into opinion. She didn't know it was already too late for that. Deborah cleared her throat. "I want to address some unfortunate rumors. Some of you may have heard out of context claims about our wellness check system. Let me be clear. Our board has always operated with the utmost care for resident safety. We never touch children. We never isolate them. Any implication otherwise is not only false, it's malicious." Someone near the back scoffed audibly. She pressed forward. "These programs were discussed in open board meetings, and community concerns are always welcome." "That's a lie," said a voice from the back. Harlan just stepped forward from the crowd, calm but firm. "There was no vote, no approved signage, no recorded motion. You proposed the idea. The board never ratified it." Gasps broke from 3 directions. Deborah's smile faltered. "Harlan," she said, voice tight, "please, let's not—" "I have the video, Deborah, from the July 18th meeting. I kept the recording, even after you said we didn't need backups." The room fell silent. Deborah blinked, once, twice, then reached for her clipboard. "I think this is getting off topic," she began, but her words trailed off as the side door opened. 2 people entered, both in plain clothes, one holding a small leather case under his arm. The other scanned the room before walking toward Deborah's podium. "Excuse me," said the woman. "My name is Inspector Merrill Dow. I'm here from the State Office of Child and Youth Protective Services. This is Officer Carver with the Municipal Protective Services Division. We'd like a moment with the HOA president." Deborah didn't move. "Now," the officer added. People murmured. Deborah straightened her spine, but her voice cracked. "This isn't appropriate. This is a private neighborhood meeting." "This is a public safety matter involving minors," Inspector Dow replied. "Your board was notified this afternoon. You may step outside with us, or we can conduct the preliminary inquiry here." For the first time in weeks, Deborah Langley hesitated without a script. Then she stepped away from the podium and walked stiffly toward the door. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at me. Natalie exhaled, slow and sharp. I pulled out my drive and handed it to Harlan. "If she tries to spin it later, use this. Timeline's complete. Metadata's intact." He nodded. Someone behind us whispered, "Was that the girl's dad?" I didn't turn around. I wasn't here to be the center of this. Cambria's story didn't need fireworks. It just needed to be believed. Outside, the wind moved through the hedges with a sound like breath being held, and finally released. They didn't bring her back in. Inspector Dow and Officer Carver spoke with Deborah Langley for 12 minutes in the hallway, just long enough for the tone inside the clubhouse to shift. The moment they stepped out, a kind of hum passed through the crowd. Not relief exactly, but recognition. A line had been crossed in public now, and everyone had seen it. When the side door closed behind them, Deborah didn't return. Her clipboard was still on the podium. Her water bottle sat untouched. Harlan stood up. "I want to make a motion," he said, louder than I'd ever heard him speak. Effective immediately, I move that we suspend President Langley's authority pending legal review. I further request that the board authorize an external audit of all community conduct notices issued over the past 12 months. Silence. Then someone clapped. A woman near the back, Lila's mother, I recognized her from the community Facebook photos, stood and added her voice. Seconded. Another hand went up, then another. The wave of support spread, not because Harlan had inspired it, but because people were done pretending. For weeks they had whispered, speculated, shared nervous glances. Now the room spoke in one voice. All in favor? Harlan asked. Hands rose. More than half, more than enough. One of the remaining board members, Karen Fielding, head of landscaping oversight, stood slowly and nodded. We'll call an emergency meeting to formalize this. We'll notify the community once legal counsel's reviewed the case. Do it soon, someone called. We've already waited too long. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Natalie squeezed my hand once, then let go. She stepped forward toward the podium, not as an officer, not even as Cambria's mother, just as a resident. She picked up the clipboard, flipped through the pages, and held one out to the nearest board member. This is blank, she said. Just a list of names, no dates, no vote logs, just first names and check boxes. Karen took it with a furrowed brow. This was in use? Deborah carried it into the bathroom with my daughter. Karen's expression changed. It wasn't outrage. It was realization. The gap between what they thought they approved and what they allowed. I walked outside while the rest of the room buzzed with murmured conversation. I needed air, space, the kind of silence that didn't feel like retreat. The night was still. The walkway lights glowed against the pavement, and the wind moved through the oak trees with a hush like someone whispering, "Finally." Cambria waited in the car. She hadn't wanted to go inside. Too many eyes, too many adults. But she asked me to text her when it was over. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. She looked up from her sketch pad. "How bad was it?" she asked. "Not bad at all." She watched me, skeptical. I nodded. They voted. Deborah's out. Audit's coming. Her shoulders lowered an inch. She didn't smile, but something in her jaw unclenched. "They believed you," I added. "Only because you had all that stuff," she said. "The videos, the data. That's why they listened." "No," I said. "They listened because you told the truth. I just showed them what it looked like." We sat there for a minute in silence. Then she held out her sketch pad. A new drawing. Not the bathroom, not Deborah. Just a girl standing in a field, hoodie half zipped, hair blowing sideways. Face turned away, eyes closed. One hand at her side. Open, not clenched. "Can I wear it tomorrow?" she asked quietly. I knew what she meant. "Yes," I said. "Wear it every day if you want." Outside the clubhouse, voices rose behind the glass. A community rearranging itself, one sentence at a time. But in that car, nothing else mattered. Cambria turned the page and started drawing again. And I let the silence sit. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is let a child feel safe enough to say nothing at all. 2 weeks later, a new sign appeared where Deborah's had once stood. Just a simple wooden placard, hand-painted by the kids in the neighborhood during Saturday's art event. It read, "We wear what keeps us whole." Cambria helped plant it. Her hoodie was yellow, brighter than the first day of spring. She didn't hide behind it anymore. She wore it like a banner. Open, sleeves loose, zipper half down, like she didn't need armor now that the war was over. The audit came through clean and fast. 5 unauthorized documents traced to Deborah's personal printer. 9 citations retroactively voided. 3 more flagged for review. Harlan stayed on the board, but 2 others resigned quietly, and not a single parent objected. The local news ran a segment, but we didn't speak publicly. Natalie declined the interview. I ignored the email requests. Cambria's name never entered the public record. That was the line we drew, and it held. What mattered happened off camera anyway. Inspector Doe emailed a week later with the formal report. Abuse of position. Improper enforcement. Risk of emotional harm to minors. Deborah would face civil review and permanent disqualification from community oversight roles. Criminal charges weren't confirmed, but the damage was done. She moved out 4 days after the decision. Her house went quiet overnight. One morning, a moving truck arrived. By sunset, the blinds were shut and the porch was empty. No goodbyes, just absence. The neighborhood didn't cheer, but it breathed easier. Natalie and I stood on our porch the next evening, coffee cooling between our hands. Cambria sat on the front steps with chalk on her fingers and streaks of pink dust on her shoes. She'd drawn something by the mailbox. 2 stick figures in matching hoodies, one big, one small. Their hands were touching. She asked if we could plant lavender in the yard, Natalie said. I nodded. We should. The hoodie was folded on her lap now. She didn't wear it every day anymore, but she never put it away. I watched her for a long time, the way her shoulders sat a little straighter, the way her eyes tracked the world without flinching. No one would see that and know what it cost. But we did. Because justice isn't a dramatic moment. It's a child picking her favorite clothes without fear. It's a dad who refuses to let her silence be twisted. It's a mother who kicks in the door before the damage is done. Cambria looked back at us and smiled. For the first time since that night, she smiled without anything weighing it down. I reached for Natalie's hand. We did it right. We didn't blink, she said. That's the difference. She was right. Deborah didn't count on pushback. She didn't think anyone would thread the timeline, capture the dots, connect the echoing silences. She built her power on hesitation. We ended it with certainty. So, if you're watching this and you've seen something that doesn't sit right, something your gut keeps circling, listen to it. Don't wait for someone else to call it out. Document it, name it. Stand up even if your voice shakes. Because every predator that hides behind rules is terrified of records. And sometimes, the only thing standing between your child and someone like Deborah Langley is you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more real stories where the truth doesn't just come out.